But insofar as the case that the NBI filed with the DOJ, is it not the case that that charge does not include contracting for the assassination?
That is correct. What was filed was grave threat and inciting to sedition.
So in other words, at this point, VP Sara is not being made to answer for contracting for assassination, correct?
That is exactly what that by testimony of the record. She's being investigated for contracting a person to kill the president. And that is continuing that not only the life of the president, but the national security of our country.
Not responsive, Your Honor. My question is if she's already being made to answer to that particular charge.
Made to answer, counsel, meaning
Subpoenaed.
has she been subpoenaed?
I'll be more specific. Has she been subpoenaed in terms of contracting for assassination?
Well, in this impeachment court, she's being on trial.
And that is very well covered by the articles. To me, as a lawyer, not only as a director, that's already that's the betrayal of public trust. Because we made an oath of office that we protect, defend the Constitution, execute laws.
Do justice to others.
Director
and
Matibag, let the
self.
court intervene at this juncture. That is not responsive to the question of counsel. Kindly just answer the question. Has the NBI issued a subpoena against the Vice President with respect to the crime of contracting a killer, allegedly?
At this point, Your Honor, not yet. At this point, Your Honor, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Please proceed, counsel.
That's enough. So no subpoena as of now. But in other words, has there been any affidavit of investigation relating to contracting for assassination?
My understanding is there was a subpoena issued that time during the investigation to the Vice President and the lawyers submitted
An affidavit.
No. Again, not responsive, Your Honor. I'm talking about an affidavit of investigation executed by the NBI.
Not
in
yet.
terms of not yet. Okay, so at this point, would you agree with me that the DOJ has not found any basis for contracting for assassination?
Wala pa po sa
Wala
ngayon.
pa. All right. So at this point, as of today, there's simply no evidence to warrant the filing of a formal charge for contracting for assassination, correct?
That's why kung babalikan po natin yung aking testimonya, this is a continuing and an open investigation as to the contracting a killer.
So in other words, the reason why these are not present at this time because your investigation is still ongoing.
It's a case build-up and an open, active investigation.
All right. Very well. Now, you mentioned about grave threats and inciting to sedition. My question to you is, these subject matters fall under the category of felonies, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Now, in fact, based on the penalties involved as provided by law, these fall under the jurisdiction of the first-level trial courts, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, moreover, for one to be declared guilty of these felonies, the burden of proof is guilt beyond reasonable doubt, correct?
That is correct.
Now, guilt beyond reasonable doubt, is this a low threshold or a high threshold?
Beyond reasonable doubt, of course, it's a high threshold.
In fact, it is the highest threshold in
That is
criminal law,
correct.
correct? So in other words, para lang for the benefit of the Filipino people watching, so hindi ka pwedeng magsampa ng kaso nang hindi mo kayang patunayan, correct?
Tama po yun. Dahil meron pong Memorandum Circular number 20 ng Department of Justice kung saan sinasabi that when you file cases, there should be a reasonable certainty of conviction.
Thank you for that clarification. So if the threshold is guilt beyond reasonable, if this threshold of guilt beyond reasonable doubt is not reached, then the accused must be acquitted, correct?
Tama po yan.
And insofar as grave threats or inciting to sedition, it is the trial courts that will decide that, correct?
That is correct.
Not the DOJ.
The DOJ will submit the information and the resolution for prosecution. At the end of the day, it will be the court who will say whether it's guilty or not.
All right. Now, in your testimony earlier, you mentioned that there are leads on the alleged person that VP Sara talked to, correct?
Yes.
But let me ask you this. During that press con, did VP Sara mention the word assassin?
Wala po.
All right. Now, the investigation on these leads, are these already final?
Pakiulit po.
The investigation based on these leads that you mentioned, are these already final?
Hindi po.
Right. So, in other words, you haven't given any opportunity for VP Sara to confront this alleged person, correct?
Hindi pa po.
All right. But will you agree with me that confronting this alleged person is part of due process?
Tama po.
Is that part of the SOP also, that you give an opportunity for VP Sara to confront?
Tama po.
All right. My next question is very simple. So you offered your testimony before this impeachment court, even you performed SOP or giving opportunity to VP Sara to confront?
Malinaw naman po yung sinabi ko. Pag nakita po namin kung sino ang taong kinausap, saka po namin siya kukomprontahin, kasama po ang taong iyon, at kasama po ang mga willing na nagbibigay ng UN Intel para harapin po ang akusasyon na yun.
So considering that you're still pursuing those leads, don't you think that your testimony today is premature? Isn't that a trial by publicity, which is not sanctioned by our laws? In fact, you mentioned during your direct testimony that you cannot give further details, correct? It's
Tama po.
classified. Okay. So, with all due respect, I'll ask this in Filipino, with all due respect to you, Director Matibag, kung hindi nyo pa po pala kayang magbigay ng detalye, bakit nyo pa po nilabas na may leads kayo in the first place? My point is, wouldn't that prejudice your ongoing investigation that you come out here and you make statements that you already have leads?